Let's use Java to transcribe an audio file into text and then use GPT-4 to post-process that file in a variety of ways. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. You can see here that on the OpenAI API page, this is at platform.openai.com, there's a section called Tutorials. And one of the tutorials, this one in the middle, is called Meeting Minutes Transcription with Whisper. Learn how to create an automated meeting minutes generator with Whisper and GPT-4. And if I go inside that, you can see they discuss everything in detail. Now, of course, they use Python. They use their own OpenAI packages to work with Python and execute the entire tutorial. If you've been paying any attention to this playlist at all, you know I already have a video on how to access the Whisper AI programmatically in Java and do the transcription, and I already have a couple of videos on how to access GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 with Java as well. So I want to combine those to do this tutorial because it's an interesting exercise, and also there's a bit of a problem with the tutorial as it's written. So as they say here, in this tutorial, we'll harness the power of OpenAI's Whisper and GPT-4 models to develop an automated meeting minutes generator. They're going to have us download an audio file that is supposedly the meeting minutes, and it's what, 3 minutes long? It's not long. I wish I could go to a meeting that was 3 minutes long, but no such luck so far. But then they want to take the audio from that meeting, transcribe it, and then post-process it to provide a summary of the discussion, extract the key points, extract the action items, if any, and perform a sentiment analysis. Now, that all sounds very formal, but it's just a way of customizing the prompts that they want to send to GPT. So it starts right off by installing the OpenAI library, but you can see the first step here is to transcribe audio with Whisper, and there's a link here to download the sample audio. Well, I hate to be the one to tell you, but it already have run into a problem because there's a restriction on the Whisper AI of how big a file you can upload to Whisper and have it process it. And that size limit is 25 megs. And the sample audio file that they want us to download, the one called earningscall.wave, is 48 megs. And the last time I checked, 48 is bigger than 25. So even though they have a little Python script here to say, oh yeah, let's open that up and let's call transcribe and return the text and everything, yeah, it doesn't work because the file's too big. Now, in an earlier video in this playlist, in this series, and I'll put a link to it in the description here, we've already talked about how to take a WAV file and using some of Java's built-in packages, break it into smaller chunks so that each chunk can be transcribed. That is simple enough to do, and I'm just going to reuse the code from there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but all the code is in the GitHub repository, and that will be linked in the description as well. So you're welcome to take a look at it. Once they've done that, however, the remaining part of this exercise, this tutorial, says, okay, now we've obtained the transcript, we'll pass it to GPT-4 in their chat completions API. And if you take a look at this little high-level Python function, they say, let's extract the summary, let's extract the key points, let's extract the action items, and let's do a sentiment analysis, whatever the heck that is. And in each time, they're going to do a computation, access GPT-4, and return the results. Now, I'm not going to go into details, but they look like this. This is what the functions resemble. They go to their chat completion API, call create, they pick GPT-4 for the model, and each one has a pair of messages. The role of system is you're a highly skilled AI, blah, blah, blah. And then in the role of user, they got the transcription. And at the end, they just walk the tree to get the result out of it. So there's the one for the abstract summary. Here's the one for the key points. See, it looks exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the content there. Here's the one for the action items. Again, the only thing that changes is the content. And then finally, here's the one for the sentiment analysis. And then they go on in this API to actually say, now that we got the meeting minutes, let's turn the meeting minutes into a Word document, Microsoft Word. Yeah, that's a bridge too far. I'm not going to do that. The horror. But let's take a look at the Java code now and see how we can do the rest of this. This is a class in my overall API, and I'm going to go through the basics of this Whisper tutorial. And notice I do have a link to the original page, just so you can check and see how things related there. Now, by the way, before I get into this, I have to mention something changed at YouTube. And now, supposedly, I haven't tried this out yet, so you'll have to let me know if it works. All I have to do is ask you to like or subscribe, and the little buttons for that will show some sparkles underneath the video. So I don't know if that's really going to happen or not. If you happen to be watching this and not in full screen, maybe you'll see it. Either way, please feel free to like and especially subscribe, because I'm getting fairly close to that 1,000 subscriber count, and I'd love to make it there by the end of the year if I could. Okay, let's get back to what we were trying to do. What I have here is my Whisper Transcribe class. That's the class that I've already gone through in an earlier video to transcribe the video. I also have my ChatGPT class, which is the one that does all the networking and the JSON parsing and everything to transmit the messages to ChatGPT and then use JSON parsing to process the result. So if I'm going to transcribe it and then access GPT-4 4 times for these prompts, the first thing I need to do is get a transcription. This is the get transcription method, which looks more complicated than it is because it looks like it has this if statement with a try catch block inside and an else, and I just couldn't find a way to simplify that. But let me tell you what happens. First thing I do is check to see if I've already transcribed the audio file. That's going to look in this audio resources path for the WAV file. It's going to look in this text resources path for the transcription. So if it finds the transcription, we just use files.readString to read the string out of it, and we're done. We just return it. The rest is exception handling. If it's not there, then I'll call the transcribe method on the audio file and go get it, and then save the transcription in the text directory. So that's all this method does. It just retrieves the existing one or generates it if necessary. Now that I have the transcription, I'm going to make a map here. Now I'm doing this on purpose because I could just go ahead and call all 4 of those prompts, but I want to experiment with doing this in parallel. I mean, after all, they're sending the exact same transcript each time with 4 different prompts. They're all independent of each other. It doesn't matter what order I do them in. So it is stateless and associative and all the nice things you need for parallel streams to be beneficial. So let me do these things sequentially. It's always good to do a sequential stream first, and then we'll try it in parallel. Now I am keeping track of the key here, the name that I want to put each prompt under, because I'm going to ultimately save the results of each into a file so that I can go look at the results. Now these prompts I took directly out of that tutorial, and you can see here I have a class called tutorial prompts that just has these 4 strings in it and aren't text blocks in Java. Nice, there's your multi-line string. So for the summarize one, you're a highly skilled AI trained in language comprehension and summarization. Read the following text, summarize it, retain the most important points, etc. You could see. Here's the key points one. You're a proficient AI with specialty in distilling information into key points based on the following text. Identify and list the main points, etc. On and on. Action items. You're an AI expert in analyzing conversations and extracting action items. Please review the text and identify any tasks, assignments, or actions that were agreed upon or mentioned as needing to be done. And finally, the sentiment one says, as an AI with expertise in language and emotion analysis. Really? Your task is to analyze the sentiment of the following text. Please consider the overall tone of the discussion, the emotion conveyed by the language used, and the context in which the words and phrases are used. Indicate whether the sentiment is generally positive, negative, or neutral, and provide a brief explanation for your analysis where possible. That one was new to me. That's why I read that whole thing. But you can see this is just copying and pasting out of that tutorial, formatting it a little bit to make it easier for me to read, and they're just constants in this class. So back to the tutorial. In the tutorial, I'm going to keep track of the overall amount of time it takes to run, although that's just a rough number. There's a lot that can vary in when you call these things over the network and you're calling GPT, and I have no idea what the load is on GPT at the moment. So it's a rough assessment to get an idea, but I do want to get some sense of it. So what I did is I took that prompt map, the one that I made up here with of entries and entry, the nice little collection factory method that was added in Java 9, I believe. The of entries method and the entry method to create a map.entry. So I'm going to take that map, get the set of keys here, well actually the whole entry set, turn it into a regular stream. So this is a sequential stream. I'm going to print out this in the little peek method. Usually I use this for debugging. I'm just going to print out which one I happen to be on at the moment. And then this is the get response part. So I'm going to produce a concurrent map with the same key, but the value is to get the response from that prompt, providing the transcription. And the get response method down here is, again, the simplest way I can do this. I have a method already in my ChatGPT class that gets a response to messages. I'm going to specify I'm using GPT-4. I make a message in the role of system with that complex prompt in it, and I make a message in the role of user with the transcription. And that's the whole thing. Now, when I'm done, I'm going to write that map to files. Each of those keys will get its own file with the response in it. That's the way I'll keep track of everything going on. All right, let me run this in its sequential stream form. To do so, I have a little test class here where I just call that process meeting minutes, and I don't actually test anything, but it's a simple driver. So let me run that, and I'll be right back. Okay, here are the results. Now again, don't put too much weight in the actual numbers, but let's take a look at what we got. So the summarized one took about a little over 12.2 seconds. I have noticed that each of these tends to take roughly between 10 and 30 seconds, although the action items one is particularly short. So the summarized took 12.2, the sentiment one took a little over about 10 and a half, the action items took 2.5, and the key points took 22.5. And if you add up all those numbers together, so this is going to be 27, 37, 49, something like that. Okay, I'm a little off. It took about 47 seconds. Everything was done sequentially. The actual amount of time each of those takes tends to be quite variable, but at least it's clear I am processing sequentially. Now what I'm going to do is redo the problem, but this time, instead of calling stream, I'm going to call parallel stream instead. So let me run that one now. Now let's take a look at the results of this one. So all 4 processing statements got written right away. So I'm not 100% sure which of these goes with which of those keys, but so be it. And you can see I'm using the test worker as well as fork join pull common workers 1, 2, and 3. You can see one of the elapsed times was about 2.5 seconds. That's probably the action items again. One was 12.7 seconds, one was 13, a little over 13 seconds, and one was 25 seconds. But if you look at the total was just slightly longer than the longest one. All of them ran concurrently, and it took as long as the longest one, and the others were running in parallel, because I do have at least 4 processors on this machine. So I get the results. Let's take a brief look at the results to see what we got out of this, but in general, this looked like a pretty productive experiment. Okay, first thing to see is this is the transcription of the audio. This time I didn't take the time to generate it, but I've generated it multiple times and it's the same each time. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to FinTech Plus Sync's second quarter 2023 earnings call, blah, blah, blah. And you can see it's not really long. This is not a real long WAV file, but it doesn't take much time to build up more than 25 megs as it turns out. But that's the earnings call itself. And of course, everything's great. They've got a huge EBITDA margin. It's all good. All right, now here is the action items result, and it says the text does not specify any tasks, assignments, or actions that were agreed upon or mentioned as needing to be done. It's a summary of the company's Q2 earnings and future expectations. Okay, that was easy. That's generally the quick one. Here is the key point summary. So 1, 2, 3, 4, they go all the way up to 14 this time. Tend to get variable numbers out of this, depending on what I put in for the temperature. Reported a 25% increase in revenue year over year with Q2 earnings of $125 million, on. And you could read it if you're interested. Here is the summarize part. So this is the single paragraph. FinTech Plus Sync reported a robust Q2 2023 with revenues of $25 million, marking a 25% year-over-year increase and a gross profit margin of 58%, on. And you can see the rest of it. And the firm is preparing for an IPO of its subsidiary Pay Plus, on. Okay. And then finally, here is the sentiment. The sentiment of this text is overwhelmingly positive. Yeah, I would say so. The author, CEO of FinTech Plus, begins and ends the discussion on a welcoming and appreciative note, which already sets a positive tone. The report is filled with positive financial results, etc., etc. Words such as stellar, remarkable, noteworthy, and impressive are used throughout to describe the company's performance. And then lastly, the appreciation for shareholders at the end, because of course all that matters are the shareholders, right? Now's not the time to get cynical. But at any rate, there you go. There's very optimistic and positive sentiment about the company's performance. So in the end, that is the Whisper AI tutorial as provided by the OpenAI tutorial section. The only part I didn't do was try to export this into a Word document. I'll leave that as an exercise for anybody masochistic enough to want to generate Word documents. There are Java libraries for this. Have fun. My condolences. At any rate, the rest of this was kind of interesting, especially the part where you get to try this in parallel as well as sequential streams. Please let me know what you think. I'd be happy to hear from you. And again, if it's not inconvenient, if it's not a problem for you, please consider like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. There will be other videos coming along soon. And thank you very much for watching Tales from the Jar Side. Take care.
Hey there, it's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, Concurrent, Spring, oh my. Groovy, Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech toast that never ends.